Hello, carbon-based life forms. It's Brad. I put up a tweet on Twitter the other day, 2 days ago, in which I said something like, I find it oddly fascinating that whenever someone writes an article surveying current Buddhism in the West, I'm never mentioned. Not that I really want to be mentioned, but I find it fascinating that I'm not, because if I was writing an article surveying current American and Western Buddhism, and I wasn't Brad Warner, I would mention Brad Warner. He seems, at least in passing, to have a small amount of significance. And I wanted to make this on a video rather than a written thing, because I want you to hear my voice and see my face. I think if I wrote this down, there would be a tendency for people to think I'm complaining and that I'm angry about this. And I'm not actually angry about it at all. It was sparked by reading a piece that came out on Lion's Roar website, maybe the magazine too, just a couple of days ago. And it was current trends in American Buddhism or something, Western Buddhism. And I saw that pop up on my Twitter or somewhere and read it. And I remember reading it with a little bit of trepidation, oh, they're going to mention me here, and then breathing a bit of a sigh of relief at the end because I wasn't mentioned. And this is kind of part of my MO, or my modus operandi in life, is that I'm trying to find a way to do what I do, to be popular enough that I can keep doing it, and make a living at it, but also stay under the radar enough that I don't have to deal with a lot of the bullshit that comes off of being a popular, pop personality or something, So I like being a little obscure, and I actually appreciate the fact that most of these surveys and books and whatnot that come out about Buddhism in America and the West don't mention me. Or the best I'll get is a little line. Here's a good example. This is Buddhism in America. I think this was sent to me by its author, Richard Hughes Seeger. Thank you, Richard. If you go to the index and look up Warner Brad, you'll see it says I'm mentioned on page 69. 69! What page am I mentioned on? So we go to page 69, right? And I was just looking at this now to prepare for this video, and I'm going, well, I'm mentioned on this page? Where the hell am I mentioned on this page? And finally found it. It's in a paragraph about Noah Levine, which Noah Levine gets a page and a half or so. And in this, and at the beginning of the Noah Levine thing, it says, la-di-da-di-da, like Zen teacher Brad Warner and a number of other young teachers, not that young, Levine came of age identifying with punk. So that's the mention I get. Contrast that with a couple of pages before. Pages 66 and 67 are mostly dedicated to an examination of acid head geeks. I'm sorry, Buddhist geeks. I think they're still calling themselves, although I think the name switch will come soon to acid head geeks. So they get a full page, come across to another. And Ethan Nichtern, who I like, New York, gets a couple of pages. Daniel Ingram gets a page, a full page, spread across 2 pages. But I get a sentence. I get by the way, Brad Warner exists, and he's a little bit like Noah Levine. Thanks. And that's generally par for the course. And this is a guy who apparently likes me enough to send me a copy of his book. Other ones I don't even get mentioned at all. And I find this interesting. And why is it? I'm just trying to ponder why this would be as objectively as possible. And I think the first reason is totally legit, which is I haven't started any sort of a movement. Everybody kind of expected me to, and it was kind of funny. If you look at some of the early press I got, they write as if I'm about to start this movement called Hardcore Zen. They're sort of expecting it to happen. You can kind of read between the lines of some early reviews of the book Hardcore Zen that they sort of expect, within the next few years there to be little Hardcore Zen centers all across the country, or something little shop fronts or something. But I didn't do that because I'm not interested in that. I'm just not interested. It's not that I think it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's something I don't want to get involved in. I don't want to get involved in a movement, around my books and teachings and stuff. That would make me crazy. And I don't want to go crazy. I want to have a reasonable life. So I don't start a movement. I started a center in LA after 12 years of being here, and it's still struggling and maybe will fall apart any minute. But that's the extent of it. That's the movement, and I go to Europe every year. So that I do go to Europe and spend about a month to once I've spent about almost 3 months there traveling around and giving talks and things. So I'm big in Japan, sort of, but not Japan. It actually happens to be Germany, I guess. And Germany and Finland and England, I can attract people much more than I attract in the US, which I think is interesting. But that's a side note. So number one, I don't have a movement, so that makes sense. You if you're looking at movements in American Buddhism, you'd certainly want to spend more time with Noah Levine. That makes sense. I don't know why you'd spend more time with Buddhist geeks who just kind of sit in their rooms taking dope, but I would spend time with Noah Levine because his is a genuine movement and seems to be important and significant on the sort of spiritual landscape, so that makes sense. But I think the other reasons may be a little more interesting. One is I'm not a very social person. This is just part of my personality. I'm a guy who doesn't really like being around people that much, big groups of people. I can do it. I can pull it out of me. I'm not totally a hermit. I can kind of get into it and get in the flow of being a performer on a stage and doing a talk or doing these videos. I like that. But as far as surrounding myself with people and dealing with them, no thank you, don't want it. So since I'm not doing the social things that are necessary to kind of lock yourself into the minds of people, I get forgotten a lot, I suppose. And also there's a bit of a feeling like, well, if you're not going to play with us, then we're not going to play with you either. I think that's going on as well. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing which you people watching this might be aware of is I'm not in line completely with the politics of contemporary Western Buddhism. Now, I've said this so many times it hurts. I don't like Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. I voted against him. I don't think he's a good president. I think there's huge amounts of problems with that guy. But I refuse to be in the group that says, anybody who voted for Donald Trump is not a true Buddhist. Get out of here. You're the bad people. And the guy at San Francisco Zen Center that was proposing that they take a stance against the regime of Donald Trump, like a deliberate, and so far they haven't done it, but that was something they talk about, and they go, I won't do that. I think if you voted for Trump, you probably have your reasons, and maybe it's because you're a racist, I don't know, but probably not. It's probably not because you're a racist that you voted for Donald Trump. There's a lot of other reasons to vote for the guy, and I can understand them. And that makes me a pariah among Buddhists. They don't want to deal with that. Another thing that's kind of along the lines is I don't really get in line with the other things that the sort of wave, the tide of American Buddhists all decide they're going to do. Like when everybody had that pile-on against Joshu Sasaki, I stood at the side of it and said, hey, wait a minute. We don't really know what was going on inside of Joshu Sasaki's place or what it meant to the people who were involved in it. So maybe we shouldn't stand in judgment like you are all just... And I wouldn't do that. And that earned me Grace Shireson, the who probably gets a lot of press in one of these books, calling me a one-stop shop for delusion and diddling or whatever, implying that because I wasn't taking this hard stand against Joshu Sasaki, this means, and her husband even wrote this point blank in an article on what the hell was it called? Sweeping Zen, the late not lamented Sweeping Zen website, that I was probably diddling all my female students, but I'm not. I'm not. I swear to God, I'm just not doing it. The thing I think it speaks to most, this fact that I'm never mentioned in these kind of books and articles and whatnot, is that Buddhism works in exactly the same way as any other human enterprise that you could compare it to. It works exactly like the entertainment business, for example. It's almost a branch of the entertainment business. I would go as far as to say that Buddhism in general in the United States as it exists today is part of the entertainment business much more than it's part of the religion business. It's kind of exists somewhere in between, but I think it's more like entertainment than religion. And you got the people that get the Academy Awards, and you got the people that get in the books and stuff, and you got the people that don't. And the people that don't get in because there's a kind of consensus of like, oh, we don't want to touch that guy. I think that's one of the reasons people don't want to mention me, because I seem like an unpredictable element. Like, you don't know where that Brad Warner guy is going to go. Maybe he's diddling all his students, or maybe he's going to say something like he loves Donald Trump, or maybe he's going to turn out to be a racist or something like that. They're all kind of scared by that. And that's fine with me. I like kind of being that scary guy to people like that. It's kind of fun, and I think it's necessary. I think somebody needs to do that, to kind of go, you know what, maybe what you're saying isn't exactly correct. And I couldn't do that and also be in with the in crowd, like shaking hands with everybody and being happy. And it's the reason I'm never going to be in the books. Maybe after I'm dead, somebody will put me in a book, because then it'll be okay, because you'll know what I've done. It won't be like I'm about to do something that you're going to regret putting me in the book for, right? So I just thought that was interesting. I think it's a social thing, and you have the people that get to sit at the cool kids tables, and then you got the kids that won't get to sit at. It's exactly like high school. I was like one of these guys who didn't get to sit at the cool kids table, but I sat at the table with people who actually were much cooler than them. One of whom ended up being the drummer for Warrant. She's my cherry pie. He was a guy I used to eat lunch with in high school, the guy who drummed for She's My Cherry Pie, Steve. Hi, Steve. I don't think you watch these, but anyway, hi, Steve, if you do. And that's an interesting place to be in, and I like that place. I actually like it that I don't get mentioned, and I like it that I get ignored and snubbed, because it works. It works for me, because I can kind of keep things at the level that I want them to be at. If that happens. So, thank you. Thank you for not putting me in your article, guy who wrote the article for Lion's Roar magazine, and thank you for, hardly mentioning me in your book, Richard Hughes Seeger, and all the other people who didn't mention me. That's nice. That works, and it helps keep things under control. And I do deliberately kind of work to put people off who might be in the business of looking for somebody who's going to be like the next thing that they can write about. I would like to kind of make those people a little worried and a little bit like, maybe I don't want to put Brad in my book because he might go off. So that's great. So thanks. And thanks for watching this video. If you want to contribute to making more of them, there's links below, and I always appreciate that, because that's how I make my living. That's how I afford my apartment here. It's seriously, I get very little from book royalties, and most of my income comes from people who donate on Patreon and PayPal. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. See you next time.